Hey, Carl here for ProAV TV. I'm at the Canon stand at NAB 2017 and I've been lucky enough to be able to talk to none other than Larry Thorpe, who's one of the chief guys at Canon. It was a fascinating chat and I really do hope you enjoy it. Okay, so Larry, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. But we'll start just a little bit, if that's okay with you, about explaining who you are for the people out there that might not have heard of you yet. So could you explain your role within Canon for us?
Well, my title is Senior Fellow with the Imaging Communications and Technology Company, and as you can see, that means I'm an old man.
Experienced.
An experienced
Surely that's
man.
the right word.
And as a Senior Fellow, I'm a sort of resource inside Canon. I work with sales, with customers, I work with marketing, I work with our business units, I work with Japan.
You're the wise guru they keep to one side.
A little bit of that, and I go to a lot of forums and speak on behalf of Canon, etc.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So what have we got new? What have we got new this year?
At Canon, we talk about an imaging ecosystem on the basis that we make lenses, we make cameras, and now we make and reference displays. And at this show, we have new toys in each. Probably start with the lens. We're introducing a studio lens in the 2/3 inch configuration, 4K UHD, because that's a movement that's beginning to gather some steam. And we have field lenses, portable lenses, now we have a studio lens. Important, those lenses, because we had to pay a lot of attention to HDR in lenses. Not a lot of people think about that.
No, I've never thought about HDR.
Very important.
Lenses.
How does the lens deal with speculars? How does lens deal with deep black?
Of course, because you'll see all those new highlights, which
Exactly.
you wouldn't before.
And you also have to pay high attention to chromatic aberrations. They become more visible with HDR.
Because of the colour space?
Because of the colour volume enhancement by HDR. It makes things that are not quite visible in HD a little bit more visible in 4K and with HDR. So we have that, and then we have, in addition to a category of lens that we introduced last year that we call the compact servo. This lens category was in response to the fact that awful lot of low-cost 4K cameras have appeared from a plethora of manufacturers below $10,000. And while they don't use the high-end cine lenses from any of the manufacturers, they're too expensive, they've been using still photography lenses. And happy in some cases, but frustrated by the lack of cinematography operational behaviors. So they asked, could we do something about that and give a lower cost cine camera, super 35mm, maybe not quite at the price of EF still lenses, but down there. And that's what this was. Last year we introduced a wide angle 18 to 80mm, and at this show we're introducing the brother, 70 to 200mm. So they straddle each other from 18 to 200mm.
It's nice they straddle each other a little bit, because you don't often see that.
The reason for it is what we said was, in this era of people being budget conscious with all these lower budget cameras, rather than buying a whole set of 10 or 12 primes, if you have two zooms that overlap and have constant aperture over the focal range, you have variable prime from 18 to 200mm. Now, some people said, yeah, that's nice, but T4.4, we're used to, much faster than that. No apologies, because we said we're going to make a low-cost, small, light lens. That determines the input aperture size, that determines your sensitivity.
And I guess you wanted to keep it a usable focal length as well. You want 18 to 80 is quite a long focal length.
It's a long focal range. And T4.4, it's a stop less than 2.8. And these cameras are remarkably sensitive. So you go up ISO 6 dB and you're back there and the noise increase is very small. Not for everybody and for the high-end applications, but for an awful lot of applications, documentary and all types of work. These lenses, I think, are going to be very popular. Then on the camera side, we have finally come out with our first A camera. We started Cinema EOS 6 years ago, and we moved modestly step by step, HD, 4K, still portable type cameras. With the C300 Mark II, we stepped into much higher performance, HDR, 15 stops, wide color gamut, but still limited at 30 frames per second for the... Now with the C700, it's our A camera. This camera is specifically developed to do major motion pictures, high-end episodic television, and we tried to put into it all of the performance and the operational features for that. So in quick summary, it's a 15-stop high dynamic range, a selection of 4 color gamuts, 709, DCI-P3, digital cinema, the wide color gamut of the UHD standard, the new standard, and then our cinema gamut. That's one that Canon developed, that straddles all of the motion picture film stock. So if you want to shoot a film digitally, you can do so, and then in post you have the latitude to emulate a Fujifilm or a Kodak stock that you want. The recording capabilities are really something. We put 2 codecs into the C700. The XF AVC that was in the C300 Mark II, except now you can do 60 frames per second 4K. And we put in ProRes. We recognize the high popularity of ProRes.
People
Certainly
ask for it.
in television production in the United States, it's very big. Now we have it in there. So onboard recording, 2 codecs of choice. We also worked with Codex, and they have built a recorder for us that docks directly to the C700. Now we can record 4K raw, log encoded, uncompressed, 12-bit up to 60 frames per second, 10-bit up to 120 frames per second.
In 4K.
In 4K.
That's huge.
We can also give you 4.5K if you want that little bit of latitude for reframing, up to 100 frames per second at 10-bit. And that same codecs will record ProRes in the codecs. So that's a very flexible recorder. We have a beautiful viewfinder. You really have to see it. It's an OLED panel, the EVF, 1920 by 1080 pixels. It's sharp.
It is very easy to focus on. We've had a lot of compliments.
Oh, good. Yeah, we're hearing good things about that. Let's see. It has a lot of the features that are sort of unique to Canon. The image sensor has this capability of sensing phase differences in the image sensor, and our dual pixel autofocus. Probably not for studio work, but for anybody who's doing run and gun documentary, it's turned out to be powerful because people now recognize it's dead accurate. That's here, that's in this. The camera can be EF or PL, and we give you an option on image sensors. The image sensor I talked about, the CMOS 4.5K, we can give you another sensor that's 4K global shutter, our first global shutter. Both of these developed by Canon.
So from an image point of view, how do you reckon that impacts it? Do you lose some of the dynamic range?
You lose some dynamic range. We're 15 stops with the 4.5K CMOS. We're 14 stops with the global shutter. Mm-hmm. And the global shutter is limited to 4K. It will not do the 4.5K.
So what's the thinking behind introducing? Because I mean, rolling shutter was very minimal anyway. All that sort of stuff.
We heard a lot that there are people who just never ever want to be trapped by a flashlight. They never want to see skew on a pan. Now we saw some of that, the skew in all of our cameras. We do a high-speed readout of our image sensor, like we read out at 120 and then we give you out 60. And that removes a great deal of skew when you do a pan. And some people have been looking at this and saying, I don't think I need a global shutter. But others have said, no, I want my global shutter. I don't want any mess when there's a flashlight. So whatever the user wants.
Well, that's the nice thing, is that you sort in some extent have a modular camera, which you can choose how you'd like to use it.
And another, from the physical point of view, we're very proud of the fact that the camera body, if you strip it down, it's made of a very robust magnesium alloy, and it's tough.
It's a sturdy old camera, isn't it?
It's 7.6 pounds.
Yeah.
I won't mention any other cameras, just compare that with other cameras. This is light, and this is important for shoulder mount and handheld.
Yeah.
So we're very proud of that. It's bristling with all of possibilities of attaching interfaces to it and monitors to it. We got
so many
all that.
outputs. It has so many screwing ports on it.
Yes, and on outputs we have 4 3G SDIs. It's not well known, but our raw signal is transported on a standardized 3G SDI. Yeah. So you can pass it through a router if you want to and record the other side of the studio.
And that's the same with the C300 Mark II, is it?
Yeah. Yes. And so you use one of these for 24, 25, 30 frames per second. You'd use 2 of them for 60 frames. You'd use 4 of them for 120 frames per second. Yeah. So it's flexibility if somebody wants to record on another recorder or record remotely. A lot of flexibility.
So it can record RAW in two ways, can't it, the C700? It can go either out via that individual SDI
Yes.
or with a codecs recorder.
Yes.
What's the difference between the two? Why would you choose to use the codecs recorder rather than, say,
Well, there are
just
some
take that
people
out?
who want to mount the whole thing on a tripod in the studio and have it integrated and record right there, ISO recording. That's the codecs. There are other folks who say, well, I'm building a video village and it doesn't matter where the recorder is, I'll pipe your raw signal over to that. So it's just anticipating these different philosophies that are out there.
Is there a quality difference at all?
No.
Okay,
It's our raw signal, same software to process it, etc. Quality is identical. Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about autofocus, because that is something that really, really does separate you guys from other manufacturers out there. I mean, why does Canon push autofocus so hard on these high, large sensor cameras?
It's one of the things probably we learned in the world of still photography, that folks just lamented the difficulties they would have, particularly on the big frame and the very shallow depth of field you have with DSLRs. It can be really taxing to focus. Now we come to 4K and HD motion imaging cameras, and you've got viewfinders that are less than HD, but you're shooting 4K, and you've got a super 35mm, your depth of field is short, and people are having difficulty focusing. Now in the studio you have the luxury with controllers and that to do precision focus. You can put a big monitor up there, but if you're outdoors and you're doing documentary work, wildlife work, you don't have the luxury of that. And now having an autofocus that you can trust. And it took us a year or two for the industry to realize, oh my goodness, this really works.
Autofocus has always been such a dirty word in the industry, hasn't
it?
But
the joy of it, the beauty of it is it's sampled right in the image sensor. Yeah. 2 photodiodes in every photo site.
It's a completely different technology than the way people were using.
We get a phase measurement, we've got powerful processing, and we've done some tweaking to the algorithms over the last couple of years that now people say it really works. And then you add face recognition on top of that, you've got some terrific operational capabilities. You can do beautiful rack focusing if you believe in it. But people have to learn to trust it for that sort of
and
creative.
I think that's key, isn't it? Trusting it, because autofocus has always been around, and it's always been a bit. Oh, well, I wouldn't use it for professional work because I can't trust it.
Exactly.
But now we're getting to that point.
We think we're there. We think we're there. Yeah. What else? That's probably the highlights of everything. Oh, an interesting thing about the C700, with all of that recording on board or in the codecs or external, we have an Ethernet connector, so we can stream out while you're recording. You can stream and give that over to editorial if they want to quickly start looking at images, etc. Nice little feature. Connectivity is something we heard a lot about, and then we have all the other things, the time code and the gen lock, and they're all there. It's bristling with connectors.
So let's talk about the other bits of the ecosystem. So the monitors, have you got anything on the monitor front?
We do. We have. Well, we're showing a new 24-inch. Last year we introduced a 24-inch HDR on-set reference display. Pretty powerful display.
2420, is it?
2420. And it has a peak brightness of 1200 nits and a black of 0.005. Okay. So quite a high contrast range. But people are still pleading for higher nits. And we are showing a prototype here of a 30-inch 2000 nit. And we're garnering commentary here now on that. But we've the 2420 with the 1200 nits is now a product that we're shipping. And we've now brought in a new 17-inch reference monitor, 4K. And it has a modest HDR capability of 300 nits. Right. That one can be battery powered. It's very easy to carry around.
So this is a nice on-set option.
It's a nice on-set, and it's rack mounted. By 17 inches rack mounted for OB trucks, etc. It's very flexible. And another point about our reference displays is that while they are 4K panels, and they have a wide color gamut, somewhat beyond the DCI-P3, not out to 2020, but DCI-P3, wider than that. We have an interface comes in from the camera on the raw signal, carrying all the metadata of the camera. And that comes in, that raw signal goes into the display debayers it. And now you're looking at your 4K raw on the display. You don't need a box to debayer. the display will debar it. So you can take a single cable from our C300 Mark II or the 700 into the monitor. Monitor's now giving you live 4K, and you loop it out to a recorder. So a nice bit of systemization there. That same raw signal is carrying all the metadata of the camera setup. Displays are in the monitor, so now a whole crew can watch rather than squinting sequentially in the EVF. They can see all the settings of the camera. And by the way, we've partnered with ARRI, where we accept the Alexa signal into our display, and we will portray all of the ARRI information. So we're being
we're playing friendly.
We want to partner with everybody with our reference displays. Built into our reference displays, they have been certified by ACES. We have, between the camera and the display, we have a total ACES ecosystem. You take our raw signal into it, it debars it, and then you can use the controls on the display itself and do grading on set per ACES. And that goes through all the IDT, the RRT, portrays on our panel. The information of the grading is stored in a thumb drive, CDL.
Oh, a USB.
USB, yes. That can then be taken back to post and say, this is what the director wants you to start with. So that systemization is there.
So how are you grading? You're plugging in a panel on that?
You can, but no, we have the knobs, the ACES knobs,
so
right on the display. Or you can use, a couple of manufacturers have, I think we have a USB connector. You can use external panels, and then we have a remote panel that can be cabled into them if you want to remote.
You don't have to use the Canon one. You can use the smaller third-party ones.
That's right. Yes, you can. Yes. And we have all of these displays in that area over there where it says Output Solutions. It's worth looking at. Yeah. Especially worth looking at the new 30-inch 2K, 2000 nit.
Yes.
Another thing that we do on our display is we accept PQ, we accept hybrid log gamma, and we don't know what they might come in at in terms of nits. Somebody's producing on a camera we don't know about. We're at our 2420 is 1200 nits, so somebody comes in with 2000 or 3000. We've a range setting system in the display where we can, with a linear compression, take the 4000 nit input, bring it down to the 1200 capability of our display. Now you grade the highlights, and then you lift that range setter out. It brings the low end back up, and now you grade the low end.
That's quite cool, because it's such a discussion at the moment, isn't it, about the peak brightness you want for
Exactly. So we've offered that to see, at least help people do all the experimenting with HDR that's going on at this moment.
Where do you sit on that, the HDR debate in terms of peak brightness and the technologies and that sort of side? What's your opinion?
I like everybody else, I'm learning daily.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I mean, when Dolby first came out, 2012 with 10,000 nits, and we all picked ourselves off the floor.
And put your sunglasses on to watch the TV.
And then began to see the sanity of it. And as we climbed in, I was on the SEMTI study group in HDR, so I'm a total believer in HDR. But I'm also very, very excited by the fact that there is the amount of experimentation going on now. System testing of hybrid log gamma through a broadcast infrastructure. Terrific. PQ, Dolby has been making PQ a little more flexible now. You can do quite a bit without metadata. So there's an awful lot happening. And then the experiments going on with the production folks. The Masters has just been shot, the big golf game by CBS in HDR. I was looking at those images this weekend, just stunning. Yeah. And they were learning a lot.
That's realistically what's going to drive this forward, isn't it? Sports
absolutely.
World.
Sports world, but also drama.
Yeah.
And there's the I call it the pearls of HDR, the thing that makes the picture beautiful, and then there's the perils of HDR. A lady with a necklace, and she turns slightly, a light catches one bead, and it goes boom, and you sort of say, "Oh, we can't have that."
I was talking to a colorist about this the other day. Yeah. It was like he has to really control where your eye looks, because your eye naturally looks towards the brightest point.
Exactly.
And now with HDR, you get such bright points.
And then, while a great deal of the attention has been focused on HDR going up the highlights, HDR goes both directions. It's supposed to go down into the deep shadows as well as going up. And the deep shadows is where an awful lot of episodic television and movies love those dark, moody scenes with lots of detail in them. Now you can argue you never see them on a television set at home, but you want your master to have all that information, because in the future the television displays are getting better and better very rapidly. So it's all exciting stuff.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
So let's go back to Canon a little bit, shall we? I mean, what's next for Canon? What's the overall thinking in
Well,
Canon
we're working on multiple fronts. We're now squarely in the cinema world. We established ourselves sort of at the lower budget documentary, low budget movies, but now with the C700 we certainly aspire to step into high-end television, high-end movies. We're separately doing an awful lot in the arena of broadcast at the 2/3 inch level, where we're rolling out an awful lot of cameras, a new studio lens, rolling out lenses, a new studio lens here, 2/3 inch, very, very high quality. We have 2 field lenses, we have 2 portable lenses, so we've now got a family of, and there's a lot of experimenting going on with the sports leagues, the broadcasters, the mobile truck folks, in sports and concerts and etc. So all at the 2/3 inch level. So we're working on that. And now we're finding that houses of worship, our big mega churches here in the US, have discovered Super 35 millimeter. They were working 2/3 inch. These are huge churches with stages. Now they've learned they want cinematic, short depth of field, have the preacher very visible, the background defocus. And now we have a long zoom lens, a 20:1 Super 35 millimeter lens that has turned out to be spectacularly successful in houses of worship. We've been doing a lot of experiments there. Then we have our other camera, the ME20 you probably heard about.
Yeah.
Little box camera, high sensitivity. Big full frame image sensor, but only 1920 by 1080 photo sites. Big photo sites, big sensitivity.
Now this is one that's been around for a while now, hasn't it? I mean, what's the reception to this been like?
Well, the reception has been sort of guarded. A lot of people saying, why do I need it? But then
so
again...
specialist.
Yes. Well, it turns out it's very remarkable that wildlife people, they are going crazy, because now they can do all their nocturnal shooting of the animals with no lights, and they're getting full color pictures. In moonlight, you get beautiful color pictures, no noise. Without moonlight, you're going to get a little bit of noise, but a full color picture. And people like National Geographic, all sorts of people are experimenting with this. And that long lens of ours was a feature lens on Your Planet Earth 2 that the BBC did. Did some spectacular imaging with that.
That was such a beautiful shot.
Yeah, oh, very, very beautiful. I've only seen a little bit of it so far, but I can't wait to see more. So we're working on all of those fronts, and we're listening. We're getting all sorts of inputs. The military are obviously very interested in our little high sensitivity camera. They can live with noise, but they want to be able to go up to the ISO 4 million that we have in that.
And be able to tell the difference between colours.
Exactly,
like that.
exactly. That's what they want to do, is ID. They can live with noise, etc. So moving on a lot of fronts. On the projection front, we've now got a laser projector. We've got a projector that meets digital cinema specs, DCI-P3. And what else? Back to the displays. Again, I talk about an ecosystem. Our reference displays, you can see it over here. You bring in a 4K signal, HDR, you're grading it. You can split screen. With a LUT that we have in there, you can see the SDR. So as you grade the HDR, you can see what's happening to the SDR.
I've done this for some customer demos, and it's so helpful.
It's very powerful. It's very powerful.
It's remarkable. You take a step back and look. Wait, does the TV I know and love really look like that?
It does, I'm afraid.
Yeah. You don't realise until you see them side by side.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much for taking the time
one
to talk
little
to
addendum. There are famous DSLRs that people love, and now we put video into them. The 5D Mark IV has 4K video in it. We just added here at the show, we're showing a Canon log.
Yes.
So it can be a B&C camera to our Cinema EOS line. And
so this is a paid upgrade for it,
that's
isn't it?
That's a paid
people
upgrade,
go back
$100
to the thing.
paid upgrade. And it gives you the 12 stops that you have with the C300 in terms of dynamic range.
Yeah.
So that's the highlights.
Okay, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.
My pleasure. Thank you.